Headlines: the United States begins to airlift embassy dependents and some other Americans out of embattled Amman, Jordan. The 82nd Airborne Division is ready to move out of Fort Bragg to protect Americans in Jordan, but the peril appears to be lessening. Cambodia reportedly has decided to yield half of its territory to the enemy in order to concentrate defenses on Phnom Penh and the Rice Belt. And the Brazilian government pledges that it will do everything possible to rescue the kidnapped West German ambassador. Reports tonight from John Cooley on the release of foreign hostages in Amman, Mike Horowitz on the Viet Cong massacre at Tan My, Bill Butel on the racist and bread and butter issues in the British election, Gregory Jackson on commencement time at Kent State, Dick Shoemaker on singing whales, and tonight's comment on diplomacy and the Middle East. If King Hussein's grip in Jordan is not broken, it is badly cracked today. After 3 days of fighting in which guerrillas controlled 80% of Amman, the capital, the king last night made vital concessions, firing the chief of his armed forces to appease the guerrillas. In return, the guerrillas released 80 Western citizens they had held hostage in an Amman hotel, including 16 Americans. The State Department has organized an airlift to bring all American dependents out. Before the airlift, ABC correspondent John Cooley and cameraman Ron Hedford were among the hostages in that hotel. Their report.
This is the Hotel Philadelphia in Amman. Only hours ago, a large box of dynamite and 2 landmines were planted in its courtyard. All of us who were the prisoners here of the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine were told that the hotel would be blown up if King Hussein did not meet their conditions. King Hussein did, in fact, surrender to the Popular Front, and we are free again. The streets of Amman are reasonably calm again, as seen through the fence which was our prison for 2.5 days. Slowly, people are going back to work. Shops are opening. But everyone expects that the trouble is not over and that we will see more. The guerrillas have won this round, and it was a major round. They control this part of the city we're in. The Jordan army only controlled the king's palace, the hills around the city. There was shooting here for 2.5 days. There were over 500 casualties. Now the king has dismissed his army commander, the security officers that the guerrillas hated so. The guerrilla prisoners have been freed, and we, who were their hostages, are free too. But what will happen next, no one in this very troubled city of Amman could say. John Cooley, ABC News, Amman.
It is hard to tell fact from wild rumor in other dispatches from Amman. Some report great damage to American property, assaults on American men, and even rape of American women. There is absolutely no evidence for any of that. But inevitably, the White House has been deeply disturbed, as ABC White House correspondent Bill Gill reports.
Crisis atmosphere late yesterday. Shortly after 6 p.m., the president alerted the 82nd Airborne Division stationed at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, alerted for possible use. The U.S. 6th Fleet was placed on standby status in the Mediterranean, and contingency plans for the evacuation of all U.S. citizens were being studied. Unconfirmed reports that an extraordinary number of Iraqi troops were massing along the Jordanian border were evaluated and found to offer no immediate threat in the Jordanian crisis. Communications between the State Department and the U.S. Embassy in Jordan were frequently interrupted as a special diplomatic task force tried to evaluate those reports of murder and rape of Americans. Finally, today, word came that conditions were improved in Amman, that Red Cross planes were then preparing to evacuate all U.S. citizens, including the non-essential personnel of the U.S. Embassy. The president was told that some Americans being held by the guerrillas as hostages had been released, and that there was no longer a need for any military rescue effort. Mr. Nixon promptly departed the White House for Florida. He will relax there over the weekend. The 82nd Airborne Division at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, has yet to relax, as ABC's David Snell reports.
From the alert call last evening until the release of hostages this morning, the men of the 82nd were busy securing equipment on pallets, rigging the pallets with parachutes in preparation for a possible aerial landing, and insisting the activity was strictly routine. Everything from sea rations to ammunition was put in the state of readiness. Since one of the division's 3 brigades is always on 12-hour standby, the drill was familiar. But despite the fact that administration officials called it contingency preparation, everything at Fort Bragg was directed at go. Veterans remembered another preparation 5 years ago that led to an extended stay in the Dominican Republic. And while administration statements this afternoon lessened the level of tension, it did not result in any official change of status. One private, expressing what must have been a universal feeling, said, "I wish somebody would tell us what's happening." David Snell, ABC News, Fort Bragg, North Carolina.
Though the White House said the situation in Jordan had eased, Israeli Defense Minister Moshe Dayan said today it may get worse, and he added if the guerrillas win in Jordan, they will go after Lebanon next. As if to prove him right, a mob of demonstrators stormed the Jordanian embassy in Beirut, Lebanon this afternoon. They smashed windows, set the building on fire, and planted a Palestinian flag on the roof. Here in Washington, concern for the Middle East helped to win President Nixon a legislative victory this afternoon. The Senate was voting on a bill to limit the president's powers to sell arms to foreign countries, thinking no doubt of Cambodia. But the bill was defeated 56-6. Many senators felt it would complicate selling arms to Israel. I'll be back with more news in a moment.
In 1909, millions of people knew nothing more about disease than how to die from it. So Metropolitan Life started a visiting nurse service for policyholders and their families to fight the spread of disease with the spread of medical knowledge. By 1952, we'd made over 100 million visits. Then, visiting nurse associations took over. Today, we're working on health problems which weren't obvious at the turn of the century, like poison control, drug abuse, and rubella inoculation. As a life insurance company, we want people to live. And as human beings, we want even more for them to live in health. We sell life insurance, but our business is life.
The communists stepped up their pressure on the capital of Cambodia today. The major highway linking Phnom Penh to the sea came under heavy attack at the crossroads city of Kampong Speu. Nearly all of the vital supplies needed to keep the city running flow over that highway. The railroad line from Phnom Penh to the sea was cut by the communists 2 months ago. The Associated Press says that well-informed but unnamed diplomatic sources in Phnom Penh said today that the Cambodian government has decided to hand over control of half of its territory to the communists. According to these reports, every available man will be used during the rainy season to try to keep the communists out of Phnom Penh itself. In Vietnam, Vice President Key said today that his country, Cambodia, and Laos are trying to work out an alliance against the communists. He said there's nothing planned now, but an invasion of North Vietnam in the future is not an impossibility. Meanwhile, South Vietnam continues to suffer from communist attacks. One of the more brutal was yesterday, a massacre in the village of Tan My. ABC's Mike Horowitz has a report.
This is the South Vietnamese village of Tan My, or what is left of it. Early Thursday, 200 Viet Cong terrorists attacked this village 18 miles south of Da Nang, killing 74 civilians and wounding 70 others. The attack began with an hour-long barrage of more than 200 mortars. Then the enemy moved in to finish the job. The Viet Cong hunted for the people who had taken cover in their houses and bunkers and killed them with grenades, satchel charges, and rifle fire. After the attack, the enemy split up into small groups and fled north. South Vietnamese troops sweeping the area were unable to find the terrorists. 85% of the village was destroyed. 2 schools and over 300 homes no longer stand here. There is a 16-man U.S. Marine Corps pacification team stationed in the village, but they were kept pinned down by the terrorists while the massacre took place. The Marines killed 7 of the enemy, and although Marine losses were not officially reported, at least 4 Marines are known to have been wounded. Civilian casualties were the worst in any single incident since the Tet Offensive of 1968. One possible motive for the attack was that the village had refused to help the Viet Cong on at least one occasion and was said to have cooperated with Americans. With all the talk of pacification, this attack on Tan My is one more example that the enemy can still strike any place in South Vietnam just about any time he wants to. Thon My is the third settlement in the area to suffer heavy casualties within the past week. The Viet Cong warning was enough for most of the survivors here, who packed up what few belongings they had left and took to the road. But there were some, as there always are, who were too old to move and try to start anew in a country that has forgotten what peace is like. Mike Horowitz, ABC News, reporting.
I'll be back with more news in a moment. Dick Cavett is the type of fellow who makes it a point to stay right on top of things. He's brave and extremely interested in people.
She has two more.
What?
His guests range from all walks of life, and you'd be surprised at some of the things they say. Dick Cavett has been known to try anything.
Oh, you're kidding.
Well, almost anything. Check out the Dick Cavett Show weeknights on ABC. It really moves.
Watch the Dick Cavett Show at 11:30, 10:30 Central Time on ABC.
The British election campaign has hummed along for 3 weeks now without causing much of a ripple anywhere. Last night, an issue that has stayed just beneath the surface all along broke out into the open. Conservative candidate Enoch Powell charged that the government has been deliberately deflating its figures on the number of non-whites living in Britain. Prime Minister Wilson charged racism and McCarthyism and told Powell to prove his charges or to apologize. From London, ABC's Bill Butel reports on Enoch Powell and the real importance of the kind of campaign he's running.
Is Enoch Powell the Conservative candidate for Southwest Wolverhampton?
Enoch Powell is the most controversial politician in Britain today. Part of his political campaign and part of his political appeal to a segment of the British population is based on his argument that the black man, the Negro, and the Asian from Commonwealth countries should be sent back home. Powell says if Britain allows the black population here to continue growing, then this green and pleasant land, as he calls it, will be overcome by the same kinds of racial problems that the United States has. Enoch Powell has touched a raw nerve. There are only about 1 million Negroes and Asians in Britain, about 2% of the population. But most of the British people don't want any more, and would be just as happy if the colored people who are here were to go back home. So it might look as if Enoch Powell and his views on race and immigration were a dominant issue in this election, but the appearance is deceptive. British law already severely limits immigration from the Commonwealth. And both major parties, Labour and the Conservatives, want the law to stay on the books. Even Dr. David Pitt's campaign in London does not seem to be based on race. Dr. Pitt is running on the Labour ticket, and he is almost certain to become the first black member of the House of Commons. His constituency in Clapham is mixed, black and white. The evidence is that if he wins, he will do so because of the color of his politics, not because of the color of his skin.
At some time in the future, race might explode into a serious political and social issue in this country. But it's not a real issue in this campaign. Race will not have much to do with deciding which party gets control of the House of Commons or which man, Harold Wilson or Edward Heath, becomes Prime Minister. The only real issue in this campaign is bread and butter, and which man, which party, is more likely to keep the British table well supplied with it. This is Bill Butel, ABC News, London.
Another ambassador was kidnapped last night in Latin America, the 9th such incident this year. The victim is West Germany's Ehrenfried von Hohleben, seized by a band of terrorists last night in Rio de Janeiro. The kidnappers want a group of political prisoners released. The Brazilian government says it will cooperate in any way possible. I'll be back with more news in a moment.
Flip Wilson for seeing skis, suntan lotion? How does that grab you? Well, when you're out to get a suntan, you're out to tan really dark, right? On the beach, brown is beautiful, right? And seeing ski will get you there. Seeing ski lets you tan as dark as you can without getting all sunburned while you do it. So if you think brown is beautiful, and you weren't born that way like some folks we know, get seeing ski.
The beach may seem just a little more crowded this year. Not with people, with cameras. This camera, the Polaroid Color Pack 2. Color pictures in a minute, $29.95. $29.95. If you've never seen one of these cameras, just go down to the beach.
Crisp, a special crunch, thin and light, with an exciting Latin taste that's great with food and drinks. Now you've got the beat. Doritos! The new beat in things to eat. Doritos! Taco-flavored Doritos tortilla chips.
Crunchy Fritos corn chips, where are you? Aha! I have you! The Frito Bandito has struck again. And now, hey, he's not Fritos corn chips. Don't have the crunch. Don't have the munch. No munch. No crunch.
If it's not Fritos corn chips, it's an unhappy Frito Bandito. Just ask the Bandito in your house.
Around the nation this weekend, the parade of caps and gowns continues as college seniors plunge headlong into the establishment world. On campus this year, the watchword is security, police security, that is. Nowhere is that more evident than at Kent State, where 4 students died during violent disorders last month. The story now from ABC's Gregory Jackson in Kent, Ohio.
In other times, the day before graduation was a time of frolic, but not here today on the Kent State campus. Even the few signs of past violence were disappearing this morning as workmen laid sod over the site of the burned-out ROTC building. Security measures are everywhere. Only 3 guests will be allowed for each graduating senior, and they will all gather in the gym. Some quiet demonstrations of protest are expected, but nothing massive and almost certainly nothing violent.
One of the greater ironies of Kent State is that it's become somewhat the symbolic headquarters for the radical student movement, but in fact it's not. More accurately, Kent is Middle America's kind of college, and more than 1/4 of the graduates here want to be public school teachers. So despite the myth, Kent never was much of an outpost for young militants, and it certainly isn't one now, although returning seniors tell me they've had a hard time convincing their elders and potential employers of that fact.
It just all started here, and it just, gives you a funny feeling to say you're from Kent State University, and then people says, oh, no, that school. Like when I went for one of my interviews, they asked me if I was like one of the typical Kent State students. They didn't know whether they'd let me in here or not,
I found people saying, oh, you're from Kent State, and the car, when I ride in the car with a sticker in Kent State, everybody turns around and say, ooh, what you look like, and things like that. And my relatives have said, where's your gun and things like this, which I resent.
A lot of people have said to me that, hi, you're one of those Kent State students, burning down buildings and everything. They say, as far as I'm concerned, they should have shot them all.
Well, I just want to get my degree and get out of here right now.
Tomorrow, the seniors will be gone, but the memory of what happened here on one sunny day in May is likely to be around for a long time. This is Gregory Jackson, ABC News, Kent State.
The graduation at the University of California's Santa Barbara campus had been set for next week, and there's a chance now that it will be held as scheduled. After 6 nights of trouble, a degree of calm has settled on the student community. ABC's Bill Werdum has a report.
Curfew on all streets, except as noted below, will be effective from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m.
It was a night of concessions by both sides. The police modified the curfew. They kept the students away from the Bank of America, but they allowed them to circulate through the town until 11 p.m. The curfew had been a major sore point. It had united hundreds of people in opposition to the police. No one was sure last night whether the modified curfew, a peace gesture, would work. At first it appeared there would be trouble. The police were taunted and abused. Radical students staged a guerrilla theater shouting pig and oink oink. The police took it very calmly. Only 3 arrests were made, and this was the first sign the tension had been broken. The previous night, 200 people had been arrested by this time. As the night wore on, the radical students drifted away, and the concerned students stayed on, turning the evening into an unprecedented rap session. For hours, the police and the students talked.
both sides in this case are afraid, sincerely afraid of conceding something to one another. And I think what we need to do is realize that, you know, everybody is human. We have human people in uniforms. We have human people over here with longer hair. And so what? Maybe we all ought to swallow a little craw. And it doesn't taste so bad.
Apparently everyone enjoyed the taste of craw last night. At 11 p.m. when the full curfew began, all it took was a reminder by the police, and the students split. They went home, and within minutes, the streets were clear. This morning, after a 3-hour session, the authorities decided that peace had a chance in Isla Vista, and in another concession, they sent the Los Angeles sheriffs home.
So de-escalation appears to have worked here in Isla Vista. The police reinforcements are going home, and maybe there is a lesson in that. When both sides choose to talk rather than fight, peace returns rather swiftly. Bill Ward, ABC News, Isla Vista, California.
Well, I'll be back with more news in a moment.
Organized crime selects a victim and strikes. The most sophisticated crime detection agency in the world reacts.
Consider subject armed and dangerous.
And a federal manhunt begins.
Wilson killed an FBI agent, Hunter. We want him.
It's them.
He's a killer, and I want him found before he can kill anyone else. The FBI on ABC.
In other news, Senator Thomas Dodd of Connecticut announced today he would not seek re-election as a Democrat. Dodd, who has been in trouble with his party ever since his censure by the Senate 3 years ago, indicated he might run as an independent. Last night in New York's Philharmonic Hall, Andrei Kostelanetz conducted the season's most unusual concert. His star musician was not a classic violinist or even a mellow trombonist. It was, in fact, an amplified, humpbacked whale. I said whale, whose musical abilities are described now by ABC's Dick Shoemaker.
Those eerie sounds have frightened many deep-water sailors. On a quiet night, it was thought they might be the clarion call of the siren of the sea, or else the ghostly echoes of those who have taken the deep six. Well, they're not that mysterious. The wooden hulls of these old ships acted as sounding boards, amplifying the underwater voice of the largest animal on Earth, the whale. Those are humpback whales singing. Scientists are not sure how or why whales sing. They say it might be a kind of communication. This film was shot for ABC by Jacques Cousteau. The sounds recorded by zoologist Robert Payne, who says at least whales sing loud and clear.
The sounds of some species may travel for a good many miles underwater under special circumstances, under the most favorable circumstances. In this day and age, there's a lot of noise pollution in the ocean from ships. As a result of that, their effective range has probably been cut down to something around 100 miles.
Dr. Payne's whale songs are now part of a concerto called And God Created Great Whales, played this week for the first time by the New York Philharmonic. But this isn't the first time singing whales have found themselves in show business. In 1946, Walt Disney did a cartoon about a whale named Willie who ended up singing opera on the stage of the New York Met. The voice is that of Nelson Eddy's. The creation, of course, strictly fiction. In the cartoon, Willie, despite his talent, suffers an unkindly demise. He's killed because the public simply doesn't understand the value of a singing whale. Unfortunately, the truth is too close to the fiction. In real life, whales are being killed at alarming rates. The oil used to make lipstick, shoe polish, margarine, and floor wax. Unless the killing stops, scientists say the world is soon going to run out of whales, singing or otherwise. Dick Shoemaker, ABC News.
I'll be back in a moment.
What's that?
It's a whippoorwill.
How about that?
That's a mockingbird.
Good. You know that one?
That's your camera.
Bet it is. Nice color. This is one of the countdown cameras from Polaroid. So automatic it even calls you when the picture is developed. Only calls with good news. Flip Wilson for seeing skis, suntan lotion? How does that grab you? Well, when you're out to get a suntan, you're out to tan really dark, right? On the beach, brown is beautiful, right? And seeing ski will get you there. Seeing ski lets you tan as dark as you can without getting all sunburned while you do it. So if you think brown is beautiful, and you weren't born that way like some folks we know, get seeing ski.
This weekend is the 3rd anniversary of the ending of the Six-Day War in the Middle East. It marks 3 years of wasted diplomatic opportunity. Arab guerrillas have grown until they're about to seize Jordan as their first totally controlled nation. The Russians have moved in directly into the conflict. Continuing Israeli casualties are such that if they go on for 10 or 20 years as is threatened, that small nation will lose strength. If Egypt was the clear cause of the Six-Day War, Israel must share blame for the lost diplomatic opportunities since. 3 years ago today, Israel's prestige and power were unchallengeable. Her Arab foes were prostrate. She had great areas of conquered territory to bargain with. A flat, generous offer to give those lands back for a steel-clad guarantee of Israeli security might have changed history. Well, it's no use crying over lost opportunities, but they should be a caution not to miss the next opportunity, and one may now be rising in the present mess. The chief obstacle to the Arabs negotiating has been their humiliation. Well, the guerrillas have restored some of their military pride, and for all its dangers, Russia's presence assures Egypt she cannot be militarily conquered. So Egypt can now negotiate. Israeli over-self-confidence was another block to real negotiation. Well, that too may be changing. It is clear that endless guerrilla pinpricks will, added together, mean a dangerous bloodletting for Israel. So an optimum moment for talking may be at hand. May our State Department make the most of it. That is tonight's news and a comment. I'm Howard K. Smith. Good night.
This has been the ABC Evening News with Frank Reynolds and Howard K. Smith, Monday through Friday in color.
This is Frank Reynolds, ABC News. Stay tuned for national award-winning news with Rick Moore, 30 minutes from now on Television 8.
This has been a presentation of ABC News.